I remember one time I got home in the evening and I found my mother very annoyed. And she said, "What are you doing? You know, mtafungiwa, you'll be in trouble." And I said, "But where were you?" She said, "I was there." "Where?" "Under a bus, hiding."
A minister of finance is taken to CID and questioned for 3 days and the markets don't move.
We were marching along Parliament Road and we got dispersed. And the nearest sanctuary was, of course, the church, the cathedral. And we were with the bishop thinking. I actually got very angry. And I said, these policemen who have chased us into a church and thrown tear gas into the church, and now we are coughing with the bishop behind the castle. Who are they? Are they Kenyans?
Mambo ni yale yale ya ukoloni. Hatujamaliza. Tuko na vitu tunaita state captain. Unajua hiyo ni nini?
They said Wakenya, they don't need any education, they don't need to know international politics, they don't need to know economics, they do not need to know culture. What they need to know is to make tables and chairs. And now that is what we are being told today with the competency-based curriculum. We are being told that we don't need to know anything, we only need to know how to work with our hands.
Katiba yetu, Wakenya, Wakenya, Katiba yetu, Wakenya, tutekeleze.
Instead of the constitution reforming the state reformed the constitution and reproduced it in its own image. By 1969, Kenya was more oppressive than the colonial state. Yeah? By 1974, when JM was talking about it, the gap between the rich Africans and the poor Africans was bigger than the gap between the colonial whites and the Africans. The gap had grown. Yeah? Today, that is where we are. The state in Kenya, once you capture the state, in a very short time, you are richer than any colonial settler ever was. People who are struggling to capture the state come on this side. They pretend they are part of the struggle to reform the state, but sooner or later their true colors will come out. But there are only two political ideologies in Kenya, in my view. The ideology of those who believe that all animals are equal, and the ideology of those who believe that some animals are more equal than others. Yeah? So, and sooner or later, if you get into a conversation about governance, you will know which ideology somebody subscribes to. Ukifika mahali fulani, when you now start about dismantling the state the way we are talking about it here, its defenders come out. The reason why we got a new constitution is because when they were fighting for power, when we wanted a constitution, they refused. That's how we ended up with the 2005 referendum. But when they fought for power, they were forced. Then that's how we got the 2020 constitution. And now they have another power struggle. And they now want to use the constitution to accommodate their power struggle. And they keep shifting sides. Yeah? Wako pande hii, lakini wako ndani.
Referendum in its nature is divisive. Anytime you bring out a question, we in the NCCK sat a few weeks here and decided we want a referendum that will not be divisive. In its own nature, it will divide us. It will put people who are for what changes are to be brought and those who are against the changes that will be brought. And technically, we will be divided in it. The best way would have been, it's a political problem and we should have looked for a political solution to the problems we are facing. The spirit of the 2010 Constitution distributed powers to the periphery and also took resources to the periphery, but then brought the voices of the periphery to the center in the form of devolution and in the form of participation. The proposed change appears really to to consolidate again power at the center. It is true that it may undermine the very effort that we are trying to do to redistribute power to the periphery. And for this reason, we who are in the reform must be cautious and deal with it carefully.
We are faced with a situation where a constitution, a discussion of constitutional reform has been presented to us by politicians. And this is my concern. There is no precedent in our history except that brief moment in 2010 which came after the 2008 violence when the politicians agreed for a progressive constitution to be passed. There is no precedent. Why now? Why now? And I think we have a right to ask that question to the political class and to ask it aggressively. Why should we expect you to do the right thing, to consolidate devolution, to guarantee human rights? I've been involved in the anti-corruption field for over 20 years. Never has there been more corruption than now. And never has so much been stolen by so few in such a short time as in the last eight years of Kenya's history.
We are being told we will have a referendum. They want to set the agenda for us. We believe the problem is not the constitution, but the problem is the lack of implementation. The problem happened that after 2010, we didn't have an election immediately after that and put people in office who would respect the constitution. Nevertheless, tuseme hivi, because we have to now take a new strategy. We know they have an agenda. So we have to start insisting on our agenda. Kweli? So we're now putting it to them. If you're going to have a referendum, then it must be about our issues.
I'm of the firm opinion that the minute we begin to discuss what should also be included in a potential referendum, we're going to go down a slippery slope and we shall be the losers.
Wananchi wanajua kwamba katiba inawastiri, inawasaidia, lakini ukiuliza wananchi wengi hawajui kile kimo huku ndani kabisa swali nini.